Welcome to Healthcare IT Today. I'm John Lynn, together with my colleague and friend Colin Hung. The world of technology and healthcare ever changing in new and novel ways, and that's why we love this stuff. So join us as we discuss the latest healthcare and health IT news, meshed together in new ways which help generate ideas and new perspectives. Plus, we'll have a little fun along the way. Today, we're going to be asking the question, is this the right list of healthcare disruptors? And be sure to follow the show on social media, the hashtag HITSM, and our personal accounts at TechEye and at Colin_Hung. Plus, check out our 19 years of health IT content at healthcareittoday.com. Colin, are you a healthcare disruptor?
Uh, that's like asking whether or not you're an expert. That's a label other people have to assign to you. You can't say it yourself.
Okay, is Healthcare IT Today a disruptor? Can you
Yeah.
ask it about your own company? I mean, it's interesting, when I talk to people like at Healthcare IT Today, our goal is to highlight the stories of success so that we can push the industry forward. So in some ways, I feel like we disrupt because we help to diffuse the innovations that are happening across healthcare to more people. So I'm going to say yes.
Well, I'm Canadian, so I'm prevented from tooting my own horn. So,
Oh, really?
that's just the way we are. No, but
We don't
no,
have
today this is going to be a fun episode today because we're going to be debating and going through this list of healthcare disruptors that was published recently by our mutual friend Alan Shoebridge, and he published it on LinkedIn. And basically, it's his sort of annual list that he puts together of healthcare disruptors, and he adds new people, he takes some people off, and then, of course, there are people that are still on the list. So I thought it would be fun today if we kind of look through that list and see whether we agree with them or not, and who we would add maybe to the list at the end.
Well, Alan's a great follow. Everyone should, look up Alan Shoebridge. He posts a lot of great content, especially marketing content for the Sway Health community. But lots of great content. I love reading his stuff, and it's true. It's people, it's companies, it's topics. Like he does a good job incorporating a lot of things. But obviously, we'll focus on the IT ones here.
Exactly. Yeah, I definitely encourage you to go out and check out that post. We'll put it in the links down below. But yeah, let's talk about the things that are still on Alan's list. And again, as you just mentioned, John, these are predominantly the health IT ones, but still on the list of healthcare disruptors for 2025. Alan's got, Google, Amazon, Apple, Mark Cuban, Jeff Bezos, Epic, Optum, United Healthcare, Microsoft, Kaiser, Anthem, CVS, virtual care wearables, and of course, AI.
The top of my list to remove from his still on the list is Apple. Like I just don't see Apple as a disruptor. Sure, the iPhone will be used a lot of places, but that's not disrupting stuff. I even had someone talk about the Apple Watch, kind of being used as a microphone. It's like that's not disruptive. Sure, it's trying to do ECGs and stuff like that, but man, I get that Apple's CEO Tim Cook has said that it's the biggest thing they're working on and whatever. But man, I just don't see it. So that's my first. I'm slashing him from the list, and Apple should be off the list.
That's interesting. I agree with you on Apple. I think I mean, obviously they're a big player and they're still going to be involved in healthcare, but nothing they've done in the past 12 months seems to indicate that they're right at the precipice of doing something major in healthcare or even announcing anything major in healthcare. I would, however, keep wearables on there because I'm seeing a lot of really interesting technologies in this particular space. I mean, you were just at CES, but coming out of that show, there just seemed to be a lot of innovation, a lot of things happening there. They're getting more sophisticated now. The wearables are starting to be used for actual patient monitoring, right, and remote monitoring. So, and I think hospitals especially are starting to embrace it. So I think it's worthy of staying on the list because I think it will definitely play a big part of what we talk about in 2025 and a big part of care in 25. And the one for me that sticks out that I'm excited for in terms of, disrupting is Google, right? I think given everything they're doing across the board, like with the changes they're making to search, I think that's going to be disruptive to healthcare, right? Like just the whole way that the AI overviews are going to change the way we look for information. That's going to be huge. And I think also with their push in AI and all the work that they're doing and all the agreements that they've signed with other people, I think they are the one that I've got my eye on in terms of disrupting care in 25.
Interesting. I like Google. I'm a little TBD, but I'm fine to leave them on the list. The two that are at the top of the list for me are Epic and Amazon. Like I think Epic is disrupting and could do even more, especially as they connect to the payers, as they connect to life sciences and things like that. I think that is disruptive in a way that we haven't seen and that only they could do. And then Amazon, I just feel like they have so much power with what they're accomplishing in Amazon healthcare and and then of course AWS with the AI similar to Google with what they can do with the AI solutions for businesses. Those are top of the list for me as far as disruptors. The one I'm not sure about is Optum United Healthcare, which by the way is one company, but it's interesting. It's like so freaking big, it makes it twice, right? Like it's crazy. But like, could they disrupt? Yes. Will they disrupt? I'm not sure, right? Like because they're profiting from the dysfunction of healthcare and they have like the full stack of healthcare. And so it's not like their payer group is going to disrupt their provider group, which is going to disrupt their pharma group. Like I just yeah, that one I'm just not sure. Like they have the power, they could do some really interesting things, but they have that full spectrum. I'm not sure how that really disrupts it.
True. I mean, and plus, both companies are they're starting the year playing defense, right? It's going to borrow an analogy from the upcoming Super Bowl. It is sort of they're playing defense, right? They're having to recover from the events of 2024. So, I
Yeah,
think they're going to have they're climbing out of
hiding.
the hole, right? So,
Yeah, they're hiding. I mean, yeah, they had the Change Healthcare incident, and then they also had the sad shooting of the CEO, which
mhm.
so they're kind of hiding right now a little bit, which makes sense, right? And that's not a recipe for disruption, is we're gonna hide, but they have so much power over the market, they could do something.
And the one I'm interested in tracking will be CVS, that Alan's got on his list, because we've seen everyone else drop out, right? But CVS is the one that's sort of staying in. They're trying to find a way to make it work. I'm hoping that they will find a magic formula for their retail health side, or at the very least, do some things on the pharmacy side to really make pharmacists and pharmacies more relevant in the provision of care. So that one to me is I'm not sure if they should be off. I agree with Alan that it should be on there, but I think they're on the bubble, if you will, for 2025 on his list.
I think I might cut them, and it's not because of their long receipts that are damaging, and you can't even carry them because they're so long. No, I don't know. I just I actually think they're going to go similar route to the Walgreens and WalMarts of the world. So I don't have much confidence that they're going to disrupt. Maybe in the PBM pharma space they could do some interesting things. I think that's going to be more interesting than kind of their direct to consumer health offering.
Let's talk about some of the people that and companies that Alan took off his list. So these are people who were previous on the list, but then this year he decided to take them off. Three big names that kind of stand out in this category: Walmart, Walgreens, and Dollar General. I think there's a general theme there, right, John?
It wasn't a good year for retail health. That's for sure. What's interesting though is that they do have market power and they do have, the stores and the connections to those communities that you have to wonder what else they're going to do. Like, I don't think it's going to be a direct to consumer one. And here's my theory on why retail health was not good and why they're not seeing it through is because their margins aren't as good as their other products. So when you have to choose what do you want to invest in, healthcare is a low margin business. And so, that doesn't make sense for them to take their other business that has higher margins and then do this. And then they don't understand it, right? So I don't know, but I do wonder what else they have cooking because they do have pharmacy businesses. They do have the eyeballs for the healthcare people, and they're paying for a lot for their employees. So that actually might be the most disruptive thing that they could do, is actually how they provide healthcare services to their employees. That would actually get them back on the list if they could do something there, because they have such a large population and the employers are the ones footing the bill for the healthcare services and should have the power to do something.
Yeah, I mean, I totally agree with Alan's assertion that these people should be off the list. You know, meaning, they tried, gave it a go, they had to take a step back, and so I think this whole year they're not really going to be putting their neck out on anything huge. I agree with you that they have the potential to do something. If anything, just as you put it, John, they're just large employers. So could they disrupt more on that side of the house and go, you know what, we're gonna, be more self-funded. We're going to provide our own care, right, in a deeper and a more different way. The one that I find is interesting. I mean, obviously here, Walmart and Walgreens, and then of course CVS. Between them, I mean, that's like 90% of the medication market in the US, right? And so we're starting to see pharmacists become more and more important in terms of being a health hub, the place where you go to maybe get some care and some questions answered. So I wonder, to your point, maybe they're going to lean into that because they already have the infrastructure. They know the margins there, which are pretty good. They've already got the skill sets and the people there. So to add on more services that are pharmacy related and expanding that business from their existing footprint, I think that could be a thing. And especially as we continue to deal with the physician's shortage, I think pharmacists will become more and more important and be allowed to do more and more things over time. And I think that just plays right into what they've already got.
Yeah. I don't think they have quite 90. I think there's some Kroger's and stuff that are pretty big, but they're
That's true.
large to your point. I think it is. And isn't that true in Canada? Pharmacists in Canada can do more than in the US, right? Like, I mean, I think someone told me that in Canada you can go do a UTI with your pharmacy, which we don't do here, right? Like, so you've already illustrated what was possible, it seems, to your point, as far as expanding the services. And we're seeing that happen across a lot of areas of healthcare where, with the right information and the right understanding of what's available, we do just want to go get the UTI. We don't need to go visit a doctor, or,
Right.
and we see this, this happening even in the blue pill, right? Like, essentially they're creating these online systems where you can get a prescription for almost nothing because they're disintermediating the process of how you get it, right? Which is, talking to a doctor. So will we see more of that? Yes. And will some of that push down towards, the pharmacies? Probably. Use Ozempic, right? Could that be over the counter and come from the pharmacy, or maybe through some, visit with the pharmacist? Maybe. I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how that evolves.
Yeah, it's true. And in Canada, we call them common ailments, right? Like pink eye and things like that, where you just go, yeah, I mean, yes, you maybe some cases you do need to see a doctor, but a lot of the times a pharmacist is capable of providing you the medication because that's what you need and want anyway, right? And and they can recommend and be the referral to if it's a more severe case or something like that. So, and that's just recognition of, yeah, we have a doctor shortage. So why burden the doc with these very, very common things that a pharmacist could just as easily help to resolve?
Yeah.
So I like that. I like that. And hey, if you're just tuning in, you're listening to Healthcare IT Today with John Lynn and Colin Hung. Today, we are debating the list of healthcare disruptors that our friend Alan Shoebridge published on LinkedIn. So, John, let's get to the exciting stuff here. The new additions to the list of disruptors. Alan's listed quite a number here, and the ones that I think stand out for me are like, OpenAI, Salesforce, Oracle, Ozempic, Trump, and General Catalyst.
I mean, I love the Ozempic ad. I heard someone say recently that if you look at the problem in our healthcare system, most of it ties back to obesity. And I was like, wow, that's fascinating, right? And if Ozempic can address the obesity problem, that goes a long way to solving some of our healthcare challenges, cost challenges, et cetera, right? Now, there are some interesting studies, right, that still need to be done. We're seeing some studies come out, but many of those studies, when you look at them, here's a simple example I heard from a doctor friend of mine. They're like, hey, a study came out that, those that take Ozempic have less lean muscle mass or something like that. He's like, that's true of everyone that loses weight. Like, so yeah, anyway, my point is that you have to read through the lines, and you also have to look at who's doing the study and what is their goal with the study. I think we need to understand some of that as well, right? So having the context is going to be really important with Ozempic, because it feels like snake oil because it's so impactful. But the question is it really that impactful, or is it snake oil? And what's the balance between the two? Figuring that out is going to be hard because everyone's going to be saying everything. Those that want you to still be obese because they're profiting off of it, and those that don't because they're paying too much for you. So that one will be interesting to watch.
Yeah, I mean it is funny. You look at this list, other than AI, I looked at Ozempic as being on par in terms of its impact on healthcare, because now we're getting to the point where the demand is outstripped supply. So it's having disrupted supply chain issues. The whole thought, the whole way you get it as well. It's causing people to kind of rethink this. To your point, like, is it time to start talking about it being over the counter, right? Like, um, and then its impact, to your point, where we're starting to hear things of how much it's helped certain people and maybe not has been helpful to others. All right, so it's kind of like stratifying this sort of weight loss world. But where I'm fascinated is where you're fascinated. What are the follow-on long-term aspects of this? Not in terms of just weight loss, but in terms of, does this actually reduce the demand for healthcare?
Mm,
Right? Because of some of the other co-conditions that go along with obesity, are we curbing it now with the prevalence of Ozempic and drugs and the GLP-1 drugs? So
yeah.
anyway, it's fascinating.
It'll be interesting to watch. The ones on the list that I was like, I'm not adding those. This one will be a little controversial for you, but OpenAI, I'm not adding it to the list. Now, I would add LLMs, but I actually think OpenAI, sure, it's the leader, it's the beginning one. But I think these LLMs with the open source LLMs and the approaches, I think LLMs in general are disrupting, and I would add them to the list. But I think we're going to have the cost reduction happen, and that's going to really hurt OpenAI. When you look at how much money they've taken and how much their costs are, sure, they're going to copy the open source and lower their costs too. But I don't know. I would put LLMs. I wouldn't put OpenAI. And then Salesforce, I don't know. They're kind of like Apple to me. They're going to have an impact. They're going to have a good customer base. I don't see them disrupting it though.
Yeah, I agree with you on Salesforce. I think what I would have chosen instead of Salesforce, not that they're not a good company, it's more that they've kind of been the champion for AI agents. So I think
Mm.
AI agents should be on the list,
Oh,
but I don't
interesting.
think necessarily it's Salesforce. I think they've just sort of been the harbinger of that, right? To say, hey, these AI agents can be very, very powerful. And in healthcare, they could be a great source for common, education of healthcare. They could maybe one day do very simple phone answering in terms of scheduling appointments and things like that. You can see those things coming. That would be very disruptive, but it's not just Salesforce, right? It's just any AI agent. So I would put that on the list. I actually think OpenAI should be on the list, John. I think I mean, yeah, sure, it's one brand of or one particular solution, but I think it is because it was open, because it was the first. I think a lot of people still use it for many, many things in healthcare, and it is the first place where people go to experiment with these kind of Gen AI tools. So I think from its impact in terms of allowing people to play, I think it's still a force in 2025. I think people are still going to be using it, whether that's going to be generating content and ideas for marketing campaigns, or whether it's actually to generate, communication with patients. I still think it deserves to be on the list.
Yeah, and their new deep research feature that they're gonna be launching soon, that is interesting. Yeah, that's gonna put a lot of those consulting companies in a really interesting place. Now, are they gonna leverage it to do it? But it's like, but wait, if you're leveraging it, why do I need you? Why am I spending so much? So yeah, I mean, it's worth watching for sure. The other one on his list that I find really fascinating is General Catalyst. They obviously bought a health system. They're investing a ton of money in different companies that could disrupt it. They're taking a different approach, and so I'm interested to see. I like them. I like the addition to the list because they're not just a regular VC firm, I guess is I would say, and healthcare kind of needs something that's a little different because we are reticent to adopt it. It's not a natural market the way you would see other areas. So I'm fascinated by what they're doing, and I could see them doing some interesting things.
I mean, I gotta say this. I don't think it would have mattered who was in the Oval Office. I think they would have been on this list, right? Because government this year has taken more of an interest in healthcare, whether it was costs or whether it was other things. I think the disruption we're seeing now may not be in the areas maybe some of us want to see, but I think anytime and government is always a disruptive force. Let's be honest. It doesn't matter what country you're in; it is always going to make my list of disruptors because they could just on a dime decide to go after something or address something, and hey, like that's what makes healthcare partly very so interesting, right?
I mean, the interesting thing for me there is more so that the Trump is in, and then the Senate and House are all Republicans. So that's where the potential for healthcare disruption comes from. If it was any one of them wasn't, then I'm not sure how much it would even make the list. Although Trump's a disruptor in general, but so I think that's where it changes is having all three of them. We'll see what they disrupt. Although I go back to Boehner at HIMSS one year, where he's like, well, the Republicans never agreed on how to solve healthcare. And so that's where I'm like, I'm not sure how much they get accomplished because they don't agree on what to do about it. And then I would also add this little caveat, and especially because those that listen to the podcast regularly will call me out if I don't address this, which is I actually think health IT won't be disrupted very much by Trump, the Senate, the House, but healthcare in general may. ACA could be replaced or things like that. But I think the health IT side, I don't see that much change. And if it's any change, maybe they'll finally do like telehealth permanently or things like that. But I don't see much disruption of health IT.
So who would you add to this list, John, that maybe Alan didn't? Is there someone that you're seeing that is going to be a disruptor in the next 12 months?
Yeah, the one that I think, especially on the health IT side of things, is Workday. When it comes to ERP. They are dominating ERP in healthcare. Now there's some that are dissatisfied. We'll see if Infor how Infor does. Oracle Health's kind of disappearing from the ERP space, from what I'm hearing from people. So yeah, I'm really interested to see what Workday and the ERP systems do along your lines of the AI agents and things. You can apply those to a lot of the solutions that they have. So I would love to add Workday to the list because that one it doesn't get as much press because it turns out the EHR might have 20,000 users where the ERP may have a couple hundred at a company. So then it's just not as visible. But from an impact standpoint, it's definitely as visible. And then the other one that, I cannot believe he didn't include any, except for Microsoft, I guess, has one. But other than that, none of the AI medical scribes were included.
Hmm.
So I'm adding AI medical scribes to the list because they are disrupting healthcare as we speak.
Yeah, but John, you can't just sort of add a category. That's cheating. You got to pick one. Is there one that you would add? Is there one particular AI scribe that you would say is going to make it should be on this list?
Which one's your favorite child, Colin? You have multiple children. I mean, that's tough. Here's the problem with it too, Colin. And I'll choose a few. I'll be nice, like no, nice to the ones I choose. And it is still developing, so I reserve the right to change my mind a year from now. But I think it's going to be in different spaces. Like in the acute care, you have Nuance and Abridge and Nabla and Suki kind of battling it out. So I think that's where it's kind of happening. Abridge is so in with Epic. I think they're going to be a big player. Nabla's doing some good things in Suki. So I would bet on those three, even over Microsoft, to disrupt the acute care. But then when you move into the ambulatory, it's kind of like the ambulatory was in the beginning of EHR. There's so many. I love Nobla because of the partnerships they've created with EHR vendors. So credit them what they're doing. But there's so many others, including ones by the EHR themselves. ModMed and Elation Health have done their own, and they can leverage the data they already have, and they can do it really granularly. So I think that's interesting. So anyway, those are some that kind of stand out for me. I mean, Suno AI, ECW has their own as well, which they're trying to do across platforms, but we'll see how that plays out for them. I just interviewed, iScribe, super fascinating company. It's been around for 10 years. They started doing voice recognition and then went to, virtual scribes, and now they're doing the AI medical scribe. Like, they have those deep integrations, and they prove that they can do it at a granular level. And yeah, anyway, I don't know. Was that enough for you?
Yeah, well, thank you for indulging me in those names. I would add one more name for you, especially as you put it on the ambulatory side, where it is sort of the Wild West. There's so many players there. I would add a company that, full disclosure, I do have consulted with them through the nonprofit that I'm associated with. It's called Tally AI. They have done some really great work up here in Canada, but also in the US, to adopt and implement their AI solution for the ambulatory space. And they've done really well in terms of, AI scribing, but also now getting into more of the AI agent that sits on top of the EHR in order to bring back information for the provider as well. So, but you're right. I mean, any of those players I think would be worthy of being on that list. For me, the two companies that I would add, Best Buy Health. I actually wrote that in the comments on that LinkedIn post. I think Best Buy Health is well positioned to be a disruptor in healthcare for two big reasons. One, of course, in the home health space, they are the perfect partner, I think, to help implement and install a lot of the more complex at-home care equipment because of their Geek Squad and because of their prevalence and retail footprints. I also think that they have the power to make or break certain wearables, right? If Best Buy decides to to carry a particular product on one brand over another, that could be very, very disruptive for that market and for that particular player because they own so much of the mind space. I'm starting to see reports and studies about who goes to Best Buy Health and who's relying on them. It's almost like what we've been talking about with pharmacists. They're now becoming a hub where people go, hey, should I choose A or B of this monitoring of this particular, glucose monitor? They're starting to become the influencers, if you will, of which one I will buy. So that's pretty interesting that they have and potentially have that much power. So I would add them. And lastly, another company, I think people shouldn't be surprised with this one. I'm going to add SureScripts to the list of potential disruptors. Again, on this theme of pharmacists and pharmacies are increasing. They are a virtual monopoly in certain spaces. They have a lot of data. And if they apply AI, which I'm sure they are, to all that data that they're housing, I think we could unlock a lot of value. And, all of the work that they're doing with prior auth and just all that, I think they could be a force in 2025.
Yeah. You actually highlighted the direct to consumer glucose monitors now that are available just over the counter. I think that's fascinating. Dexcare does some work in that. That could be really disruptive. It goes back to the wearables, so it's kind of already on the list in the wearables, but that continuous monitoring and direct to consumer is fascinating. I'll throw one other out there as we wrap, and that's AARP. You should have seen them at CES. I mean, they have the audience that matters most to healthcare, the older people that need healthcare and do it for a living. So anyway, watch what AARP is doing.
I love it. I love it. And hey, first of all, thank you so much for Alan for putting this list and sort of being the central theme of today's episode. And thank you to all of you who've tuned into this episode of Healthcare IT Today. You can find more details about our show by checking out the programs page on healthcarenowradio.com. And please share your voice and engage with the community at healthcareittoday.com, as well as on social media using the hashtag HITSM. I'm Colin Hung, along with my friend and Health IT collaborator, John Lynn. Thanks for listening, and have a great week.